This podcast is brought to you in conjunction with Hustro.com, a leading construction management software tool.
So, for example, let's say you do have a project manager and they do have a sort of behavioral problem that makes it difficult for other people who are working with them, right?
Yeah.
But what happens when that person actually is kind of a rock star at what they do, right?
Yeah.
They might be difficult to work with, but they're a high performer, right?
Yeah.
So you go to the leader and the leader's going to say,
Yeah.
well, I don't want to get rid of them. They're the best. And so this, when I think about this, I think, okay, if they're the best, let's capture the best of how they work and let's make that a process.
Yeah.
And for the things that are not the best of how they work, let's talk about how we can all work together better as a team. Because if this guy or gal are delivering 80% of the results and say we've got two others that aren't doing so much, let's elevate those others.
Yeah.
Right? Let's elevate those others.
Hi everybody, Gavin Coyle, I'm the Gaffer, back again with a gentleman who is going to help us with all of our problems of how to run and manage a successful construction company. Founder and principal consultant of Bartizan Group, Bryan Guess, is here to give us all of the information that we've all struggled with, which is how do you create a successful business and find all those potholes that are leaking within your business in terms of risks that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. I'm looking forward to pulling him apart and finding out where's all these nuggets of information that's going to allow you guys to have a bigger, better, more sustainable business. Bryan, welcome to the show, and we are looking forward to getting under the bonnet with regards to your blueprint.
Wow, Gavin, thank you so much. It is odd for me to reply with I am ready to be torn apart, but since those were your words, no, truly, thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
No, we're not going to tear you apart. But let's start with the name Bartizan. I am interested in how that name came about. It's your business, I take it. You're the founder and owner. Is there anyone else? Is there a co-founder? But tell us about the name first, Bartizan. Where did that come out of?
Sure. So prior to starting Bartizan, I worked in commercial building consulting, and so I have a lot of experience in the built world, as do a lot of your audience. And honestly, I was looking for a one-word name that was unique and had some sort of metaphorical weight to it. So a bartizan is an old term for, if you think of like a medieval castle or a fort, it's a sort of cantilevered tower that sticks up just outside of, say, the corner of a parapet wall or something like that. And it represents essentially like a strategic vantage point just outside, but also with sometimes a view to the inside and attached to the inside. And it's sort of a metaphor for what I do. I come into a business and I help them sort of increase their vantage, their point of view, to help them both defensively and offensively and how they handle the challenges of their business.
Okay, so that's a very smart. It's a very smart logo. Like in terms of good thinking, especially from a strategic company. So long as you don't start pouring hot oil down on your customers, that's the main thing.
The two biggest challenges with the name are people don't know how to pronounce it sometimes, which is my burden to bear, and also a lot of times people just think it's my last name. I'm Bryan Bartizan. I get that all the time.
Wow.
All the time.
Wow. So let's get straight into it then. A lot of guys, as you know, are genuinely having difficulty running a construction business. There's a multitude of different issues. So tell me about your gap analysis approach to a first phone call that comes into the office to say, I think I need help. Is Bryan there? I'd like to have a conversation. How does that conversation progress to the next stage?
Sure. So it usually starts with me trying to find out what they think the problem is. Say they're trying to, for example, I see a lot of small to medium businesses that are trying to grow. And in the process of growing, maybe they take on additional subcontractors or, they changed how they're doing their biz dev or something like that. And they start to have projects that don't deliver as consistently before. So they get, a hit to their reputation, or they, take it on the chin in terms of profit on a job. So I asked them from their point of view, well, what do you think, what is the problem? And so they'll give me those things, like we have 2 or 3 project managers that aren't delivering as consistently, or, XYZ problem. And I will just essentially just ask them a set of sort of systematic questions as it relates to the business. Because what I find is usually those are just symptoms. They seem like the ultimate problem, but usually there's something within the organization that's feeding into that. And that's why those problems are happening more than just a single time. Does that make sense? We
Yeah.
can get specific if you want.
No, we will get specific, but leave that for later on.
Sure.
I'm curious as well, because obviously I'm not in that field that you're in, but like, out of all your phone calls, what percentage would be the damage is already done and I need your help, rather than I'm going to sort this before this hits me?
Well, it's not what I would consider to be the ideal, not for me, but really for the people that I'm serving. Usually, I would say the calls are 4 out of 5 going to be, we're in hot water right now. And so I tend to be seen a lot of times at first as a fixer. So what can we do to get things back on the rails? Or, you don't want to kill a project, but sometimes that's a question that comes up. Less in construction, more in other industries for internal projects. But so it is an issue of they're already gone sideways. So I do my best to go in and help them sort it out. We try to do a really, really quick diagnosis. What's the problem? Where's the money? What are the authority structures? How did we get here? How did this project fit into the business? What are our best paths forward? And we try to really, really go in there and work directly with the teams, right? I'm not coming in and taking over. I'm coming in and saying, what do we know, and helping them sort of sort it out. I would love it to be the other way around, though, Gavin. I'd love it to be people are, have the foresight and the time, say, hey, we're doing well, but how could we do better? Or we had 1 or 2 slip ups and it could have been worse. How can we do better? Right? But the reality is it's more often the other way around. Usually when I get to the point to where I'm working on process improvement, we've already gone through a fire.
Yeah. Like, if you're listening or if you're watching on YouTube, what the hell, guys? Why don't you just get in touch with someone? No, I think part of it might be you have these charlatans, and one of the reasons we wanted to get you on the show is because you're not a charlatan. You have a background in construction, so you know what you're talking. You know the language that you're talking. I suppose, is it that there's these life coach type people out there that are saying, hey, I can be your best buddy, and next thing you're paying stupid money to these people and they're not really getting any value out of it. Like, really, there's a mentorship need in the first instance for people to sort of have a mentor, and it could be you today and it could be somebody else next year. Why not share like this? And something that I've taken from businesses, that every now and again I will ring somebody comes across more intelligent than me.
Oh, yeah, I know that feeling.
And I asked them and basically what we said at the start is, strip me apart, tell me where all the bodies are buried, or where's the problems within the business. And they will everybody finds something. There's always something that you're not doing right. So are we saying then the first priority here is look at the risk before the risk hits you? Identify the risks before the risks hit you. Have a risk register of your business so that you can gauge what are the ones that are going to jump up and bite you.
I was hoping you'd bring that up because I know that I've heard you say that on other episodes. Risk register. I've heard you mention business plan a lot of times as well.
That's true. Yeah. Sorry for repeating myself.
No. That's not what I mean. We need to hear these things, because the reality, or at least my experience, I should say, is that it's not that business owners aren't thinking about these things. They definitely are.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the amount of attention you can give to something is directly related to your personnel bandwidth, what you as the owner actually are involved in. Are you working on your business or in your business? I know that sounds like a cliche, but there is actual practical implications of that. And what I see a lot is that the business owners are thinking about these things, but do they have the time to prioritize them? A lot of times I've heard, folks such as yourself, folks in our industry and related industries, so you said, where are the bodies buried, right? They talk about these sort of near misses, where did we lose money on a job? And, oh man, I'm glad we made it through that one, right? And related to that idea, a lot of people in small contracting companies started out because they got a job handed to them.
Correct.
And instead of leading with a business plan, right? So if you look at those two ideas and you think, well, like, where are we putting our focus, right? Are we putting our focus on job to job to job to job
Hmm.
rather than on the business, right? Then you have a tendency to look at failures or near misses or problems as being these sort of isolated events.
Yeah,
But in my experience, when you dig deeper, they're often not.
100%.
And yeah, and a lot of times on top of that, the explanation is usually framed as something technical. And it's not that there aren't technical components, but if it happens more than once, there's often something in the business, the culture or the processes,
Yeah,
something about how we're working that makes these things repeatable. And getting people to have the mindset shift
yeah.
to look for those patterns is a big, big part of what the upfront work is with what I do.
I don't think we can use the excuse that, look, I just don't have time. I'll get to that at a later stage, because that's what I hear. I'm like, look, Gavin, just didn't have time. It creeped up
Mhm.
on me before I knew it. I knew it was something I needed to sort out, but I just, things are so busy and blah, blah. What could be more important than the lifeblood of your business in your hand, literally going to melt if you don't identify these issues within your business? It's
And
mind-boggling that there's no sort of out, like, you don't have to bring in, like, no offense to yourself, but you don't have to bring an expert like yourself into the business. You can do this yourself. Self-assessment is probably just and be brutal on yourself, and then,
mhm.
if you felt that you don't have to be brutal because you've done it, bring someone like yourself in, and then you can give them more hard truths.
Yes, sir. So you're absolutely right. And in an ideal world, my business wouldn't need to exist. And I'm well aware of that. And I think you've just helped me reframe my mission to put myself out of business before I die.
You want to do
Because
your own risk assessment on yourself?
you're well, you're absolutely right. No one has more technical expertise and intimate knowledge of how their business runs than the people inside of it.
Yeah,
And yet, the paradox of that is, what do we put our focus on, right?
correct.
So you said, sometimes small to medium business owners or even departments in larger companies, they'll come to you, they'll say, something bad happened. We lost some money. We had a huge turnover. We
Mm,
had some guys walk off a job. Pick a bad thing, right? And we treat it as an isolated technical event. But the people at the leadership level are seeing some of these patterns, but maybe they don't know how. Maybe they see a sort of a set of patterns over here, a set of patterns in this side of the business, and they can't figure out whether or how they connect. And the time it takes, and also like the being able to divorce yourself from the politics and the culture,
yeah,
that's another piece of it. But the time it takes is sometimes unknown up front, and it can feel like, oh well, how much time am I going to spend on trying to figure out if there's something hiding in the business, when it could just be throw some more people on the job,
yeah.
right? Throw some more people on the job, get some more subs in here, depending on what your problem is. But that's easier. It's like you put the band-aid on it, right?
Mm.
You put the band-aid on the problem rather than figuring out why you're bleeding so much.
I'm really interested to find out from you. Now I'm going to put you on the spot, if so.
Do
I'm
it.
going to apologize in advance if I
No, go for it.
look, and we can skip over this question if you don't answer it.
No,
Oh,
I'm ready for it.
you sure? No, no, I wouldn't. I wouldn't. I'm not trying to put you. I'm not trying to catch you out, but I'm just interested in maybe an anecdotal story or a sort of a case study where you went in and everybody just couldn't figure out what the hell, where it went wrong, and you figured it out, and somebody had that aha moment, and what that moment was. I'm sure you have a number of them, but what one stands out for you in that regard?
The one that I think is the best story, I sort of came in after the fact. So I don't want to make it sound like I'm the big hero of the day here, but it was the company that I worked for, and I was on this project. So we had a client, a big investment company. They have a portfolio of buildings all over the country. And they were going to acquire this building in Washington, D.C. It's a sort of historic building, not something that you would know. It's not like the White House or something like that, but it's a
Yeah.
fairly old historic building, office building, right? In a very prominent location. And this was about 2013 or so. They, as part of their due diligence, hired a very respectable, reputable, large engineering company to come in and assess the situation. And a part of that was there were recurring roof leaks on, I think it was the 12th to 13th floor. They didn't happen every rain, but they happened often enough that it was a problem. And so part of the calculus of buying this building is, do we need to replace the roofs? Okay, specifically the roofs on that level,
Yeah.
which because of the height of the building and the location and everything was no small project, and it would be very expensive. And as I'm sure when concessions around repairs and big capital projects are obviously a very important part of these negotiations when a building's being bought or sold. So to sort of make the first chapter of the story a little shorter, my boss at the time and one of our other key consultants were called in because the buyer, our client, wanted a second opinion. The original engineering firm had said, you need to replace these roofs. They're roughly 20 years old. That's a not unusual lifespan for commercial, low slope flat roofs, if you will.
Yeah.
And so our client wanted a second opinion. They call us in and we start asking the questions. What kind of rains? Is direction, like wind direction involved? All that stuff. And we suspected that it wasn't the roofs at all, which is not as uncommon as you would think with roof leaks. And so we waited for the next big nor'easter rain. Lo and behold, it leaks. We go there shortly thereafter, go to the wall where the wall meets the roof, directly above the area that was leaking, water test it. And I don't mean like a fancy engineering like ASTM water testing, spraying with a hose, right? Not too long later, leaks. So on the one hand, we have somebody saying, we've done all the due diligence and replaced the roofs. And we came in and said, maybe not. These are Irma roofs. They're they tend to outperform standard low slope roofs. It's very particular where the leaks are coming in. Let's do a little bit more digging, right? And that digging involved technical components. Sure. Let's talk about the rain. Let's talk about the frequency that it happens. But also, let's ask the people what's going on. What does the engineer have? Do we have documentation? Like one guy says, oh, it leaks every time that it's a directional rain. One guy says it leaks like kind of sporadically, right? So, all right, so which one of those is true? And sort of sussing out, doing the detective work, if you will, of what documentation do we have? What are people saying? What do the engineers say? Where's the money? And those roofs, most of them are still on that building to this day, by the way. They have re-roofed a couple of them. So we're talking 13 years later. We have re-roofed a couple of them specifically because they did a rooftop modification that they were doing. They wanted to build out something different. And the rest of them are all still there. I hope that gives you a little bit of an example of how we think about these things when we go in.
Yeah, see, like that's amazing. That like what I take from that is, can we challenge the way we do business in the traditional way, in such a way that we can get somebody to come in and go, do you know what, you could do this better, smarter, and cheaper. Whereas some people just have a fixation of, I'm going to do this cheaper, and I'm going to cut corners, or maybe I don't want to give the perception that I'm cutting corners, but I've priced it at this, but I'm going to shave off a few bits and pieces here because I know I can cut corners, or I don't have to go with a full package, whatever. Whereas what you're saying is, no, we can do it safer, we can do it with better quality, and if we just re-engineer the systematic approach of how to fix this problem, we can then implement that into the business so that we become better than our competitors. So this is the nugget of golden nuggets stuff that I'm looking for people like you, is that let's challenge the way you do drywall, you do plumbing, you do electrical. Let's challenge the way you're doing that, and let's see, is there a better way of doing it?
And just in case there was a risk that the analogy didn't transfer over into other business processes, because we were kind of looking at something that was a maintenance problem that could become a capital problem versus, well, Brian, I'm just a contractor. That's a different sort of world for me. Well, so here's the parallel, right?
Yeah.
The way the building engineer and the team were handling roof leaks was as a maintenance and repair thing. So a leak happens, we call a contractor. They fix something because they're going to, because that's what you do, right? Like that's what we do, right? You go and you fix something. You say, this was our best guess. If you're doing a really great job, you're taking pictures. You're sort of showing where the leak was on the inside, where it was on the top. The thinking around it, you're giving them some sort of estimate of like how likely it will be successful, right? Yeah. But those site engineers and building managers, that's what they do. It's a problem, call for a fix. A problem, call for a fix. And in contracting or any sort of project-based delivery, right? If you have a project that goes bad, maybe you're behind schedule, right? Yeah. Throw some bodies on it, right? Like there's a problem and a short-term fix, a problem, a short-term fix. But in the case of this building that was leaking that I was telling you before, had they just been documenting everything all along in the way that is like industry standard, to be quite fair, which a lot of people don't do, they would have had more than enough information that the engineer who came in before us could have determined that it was not the roofs, it was the wall. And we would have never been called in, and that would have been a different universe we lived in. But the point is, they could have done business differently. They could have looked at the system differently. And we can do that in our project-based companies as well. Contractors, engineers, even like marketing agencies, anybody that's delivering an external project, you don't have to think, oh, my business is different than someone who's managing an asset.
Yeah.
Those processes actually do have a lot of similarities in common. If we think strategically about them, we can prevent a lot of headaches. I hope that was clear.
No, it's very clear. In your region or in your district or in the United States, do you have a thing called operation and maintenance manual that will be handed over at the end of the project?
Yes, a lot of times there would be one. Yes.
Okay.
Not always. It depends on the nature of the project, but yes, a good project would have one.
I think they're changed it. Safety file, they call it here in Ireland. I think it's in the UK as well. It's called safety file. But the O&M manual was the golden sort of handover document at the end of the project that, that wall was built by X. This is what's in the wall. This is why it was built the way it was built. Mm-hmm. And, the life story of how the materials came together. It wouldn't surprise you, I suppose, that with a lot of these projects, when you say, well, where's the O&M manual for the project, people start looking at each other going, it's not there. Mm-hmm. Or we looked at it, there's nothing there. Or it was never asked for when there was a handover period or whatever else.
Absolutely.
Are we saying as well, as part of the risk analysis of doing a project, if it's an existing structure or if you're doing a renovation or something like that, number one is, where's the O&M manual, and give me a look at it.
Right. And also warranties, as-built drawings, specifications, work history since the building has been. So like say there's a sale, right? Yeah. A lot of times when we do the due diligence process, you ask the existing owner where that stuff is. They don't know. And you're just trying to do your best for a buyer, right? And now it's an even more difficult thing because it's not like your own people didn't ask or lost the documents. Now you're another step removed, right? Yeah. And some of those documents can be incredibly valuable, not just from a diagnostic point of view, but even from a financial point of view.
100%.
Like a warranty for a properly maintained built structure can actually be very valuable.
Yeah.
Some people have these cliches that they're not. And this was something that was, by the way, this is not a novel idea to me. This was ingrained in me as a consultant for 12 years. I don't want to pretend that I'm making this up, but a lot of people just don't realize some of these things can be incredibly valuable to you.
Are you looking to spend less time on paperwork and more time making things happen on site? Hustro.com is the simplest construction management software out there. Streamline inspections, defect reporting, and all your project documentation, all in one app. With Hustro.com, contractors are seeing 75% less time on inspections and reports, 47% faster corrective actions, and almost a third quicker decision making. Hustro.com is the simplest software to manage construction projects, period. Level up your site efficiency today with Hustro.com.
Well, like the obvious one is you've got a leak in the roof, and next thing you go to the warranty, and the warranty is for another 20 years. So instead of somebody saying, well, we've got to go and fix the roof, you got to go, hold on a minute, ring the manufacturer up because that shouldn't be leaking. Now, obviously, you can't wait until the claim comes true or whatever else, but you can still put that on the burner and kind of say, look, we can run parallel. Let's fix it now and tell them we're going to fix it and how we're going to fix it and get them to sign off on the fact that we're fixing it. But in the meantime, you guys are going to pay for this, like down the road.
Absolutely. So as an owner, you can do whatever you want to stop a leak on an emergency basis in pretty much any manufacturer's warranty. But so if you got to go up there and throw some chewing gum down to stop the leak, that's fine, right? But you got to report it to the manufacturer, and then you got to find a contractor that's authorized by them, right? That's where a lot of people fall short. They just call whoever they know.
Great point.
They don't understand the value. Yeah. So there are these pieces that aren't complicated, but aren't maybe necessarily just intuitive, right?
Yeah.
The thing is, the theme here is you have a problem and you do an immediate fix. You have a problem, you do an immediate fix. But the systems if you do it right, are way more valuable for your business and your built assets.
Great point. Love the point about the approved contractors as well, because that's a sting in the tail. Oh, well, they're not on our approved list, so you shouldn't have used them, so therefore we can't back up the warranty. Wow.
Seen it happen so many times.
It's a get out of jail clause. Basically.
It sure is.
It's what we call tripwire.
Yeah, that's well put. It is a tripwire. Not even just what I do at Bartizan. The last company that I was at, I mean, that was a thing that we always harped on, was thinking strategically about the warranties and the documentation and how you keep track of these things, because there are tripwires in them. And a lot of people make the argument that a manufacturer's warranty is more to cover their ass than it is to help you. But if you manage it right, it can be super valuable. And I've seen it so many times. Full roof replacements, on the manufacturer's dime. It can be done. You just got to. It's the kind of thing that's it's not sexy, and it's not an immediate problem. But boy, is it worth it when the time comes.
Yeah, no, and I think we probably place too much effort or too much emphasis, on the architect and maybe even the engineer, and we shouldn't entirely put it all on them. We should interrogate the information ourselves rather than sort of hoping that the engineer and the architect will come up with a solution where there's a problem. Or in fairness to the architect and engineer, they're probably so far in the weeds that they're probably not looking at some of this stuff themselves. Is that your experience as well, is it?
Yeah. You actually bring up a really good point. Sometimes it's say a GC or a construction manager that's interfacing between all these parties, architect, engineer, because they do have enough work on their plates, right? It's not an architect or an engineer or a roof consulting designer's typical purview to be looking at all the other business stuff, right? But at the same time, someone, whether it's inside the owner organization or a representative of theirs, someone needs to be asking those questions, because otherwise, how in the hell do we even know that all the people who are working on this project are even working towards the same goal, right? Like, an architect's got their specs, an engineer's got their specs, then you end up having say value engineering or something like that happens, a change during the submittal process. Like, somebody needs to make sure that the strategy and the original business intent is still being captured through the whole process, and that interfacing between those various parties and trades is incredibly important, because, as you said, the individual organizations are in the weeds. They're in the weeds. They know what their scope is and their job is, and honestly, a lot of times that's enough for them.
Interested to see, and thank you very much for that. They're brilliant insights, by the way. Interested to hear sort of a landscape of your clients, and I don't want to. You're obviously not going to divulge confidential information, but just give us a spread of different problems that you're fixing at the moment, or you have done in the last couple of years.
Sure. Okay. All right. So I'll do the end of my building consulting career, and then I'll kind of transition that into how it looks now, because it's a little broader now. But we would have Fortune 500 clients that had portfolios of buildings all over the country, but we would also have nonprofits that had a very small footprint. We would have heavy industry companies who would have 1 or 2 plants or 10 or 12 plants. We would have developers that would be just interested in doing like light industrial warehouses or multi-use. Yeah. These warehouses getting converted into office spaces and multi-tenant spaces and things like that. So it was the whole gamut. Yeah. It was the whole gamut. But it was always, at least in my last company, it was always oriented around working for the building owners and then interfacing with their various parties. Yeah. Occasionally, we would work for contractors and engineers and architects directly, or property managers directly, but usually it was at the behest of the owners or after we had already built an existing relationship with them. Mm-hmm. And really, the difference between that and what Bartizan is doing now is I definitely started with that base because I know the lingua franca, right? I know the jargon of that world. I know the ins and outs and the technical details. And I have expanded that into other sort of project-based contracting businesses by partnering and building out a network of subject matter experts so that we can always make sure that there's either enough technical knowledge inside the business or I can bring in some additional if needed. And that way we can cover the actual nuts and bolts of the business plus the strategy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so now, it's not just architects, engineers, building owners. I'm currently talking with like a custom software company, marketing agencies, things like that, because the strategic and the process oriented aspects of the business actually have so many parallels,
Mm-hmm.
so many parallels. So that's kind of my model now, and that's a smattering of clients.
So do you find yourself sitting in the small to medium enterprise market, Brian? Where's
Yes,
your ideal customer basically is in that sweet spot, is it?
that is what I love to do. Not opposed to working with huge enterprises. I've done it in the past. I'm very comfortable in there, but I have a passion for helping these small to medium businesses because a lot of times they don't have the bandwidth to implement on these sort of like important but not urgent
Yeah,
initiatives.
yeah,
And sometimes they're growing, and what worked at one level of growth doesn't scale.
yeah.
And so it's helpful to have another person who's seen the scaling happen sort of help you figure out where do the processes need to change, where do we adjust the flow of information, the allocation of resources, whether it be capital or personnel, things like that. And I just really, because the last company I worked for was a small but like powerhouse of a company,
Yeah.
I just really have a passion for that.
Tell me this. It's been burning in the back of my head, so I need to get it out.
Yeah.
How much emphasis do you place on poor or bad behaviors for bad performance within a business in terms of risk?
Help me understand a little bit. Are we talking at the level of individual performers or something different?
How deep of a problem is it from a behavioral point of view? How deep of a problem is it within businesses that you see or that you've seen in your career up to date? How big is the behavioral problem above and over maybe the systems problem or the structure problem?
Oh, okay. So just to make sure I'm following you, more of the when you say behavioral, more of the mindset of how we're operating in the business at the like leadership level?
People's attitudes and
Oh, I
people's
see.
application to the job that they do, and then being just sort of the problem rather than the solution in terms of the business.
I see. I'll give you a sort of typical, like anecdotal bit of experience for me, and you tell me if this is hitting at what you're saying. So, as a commercial building enclosure consultant, which I was for 12 years, we monitored a lot of construction projects. A lot of them were roofing and walls. And let's say there's a technological change, a new application, a new type of adhesive for putting down a membrane, or a new type of insulation system, or something like that. But you have old hands who've been doing it for decades, right? How do you have a conversation with someone who's been a brilliant tradesperson for 30 years and tell them they're not doing something according to spec? And then because a lot of times they'll say, look, son, like, I'm old enough to be your dad or granddad. This is the way we do it. And I say, I appreciate that. I get why you do it like that. But the client has paid for a different way of doing things. Is that hitting on the kind of vein that you're talking about, like the actual behavior of the people
I,
inhibiting the change that you're trying to implement?
I suppose really what I'm getting to is probably the culture.
Oh,
On the broad overview of it, Harry does it the way he does it, and Mary does it the way she does it, and we've always done it that way. And they're entrenched and they're not moving. But when you go in and you look at it and go, do you know what? Actually, they are the problem within the business, and in order for the business to move forward, unfortunately, unless these people change their attitudes and their, I wouldn't say personality, but behavior, the way they talk, the way they come across, the way they, or maybe they're just not smart enough for the position that they're in, and they're not actually executing the job. What I'm interested in is when you go in and do these sort of fact-finding operations, which is pretty much what you're doing, is fact-finding.
yeah, it's
How
fair.
often do you come across till you come back to the CEO and go, actually, it's not really systems. You need to get rid of that manager. Like it's destroying the business.
I see. That does happen,
Mm.
Gavin. Isn't always intractable as it sounds, though. Sometimes it is. Sometimes a person is just going to resist, and they are. It's the idea of the bad apple that spoils the bunch. That does happen. More often, what I see that can manifest at a surface level the same way is less of a person's behavior and more of the tribal knowledge that they have in how they say execute a project. So you mentioned Mary or Tim or whoever, they do a thing this way, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of times what will happen is, well, don't tell me how to run a project. I've been running projects for 2 decades. This works. And it's like, okay, yeah, but nobody knows what you're doing because there's no documentation, or it's insufficient documentation. There have been changes that were handshake deals and horse trading and things like that. Metaphorical horse trading. So it's not that what you're saying doesn't happen. In my experience, though, it's more often siloed knowledge in the heads of individuals that doesn't get around. There's not a standard process in some cases, especially for growing companies. That's not to say there aren't bad apples. There are, and that's a tough conversation to have. And I'm not the kind of person who enjoys doing work that leads to downsizing. It's sort of against my ethos. So I'm way more interested in trying to help with the change management. It's not always as beautiful and glamorous as a process as I'd love it to be. But yeah, short answer to your question is yes, sometimes it's like that. And sometimes we have to have hard conversations about a person and their behavior, but it's not as often as that everybody just does things different ways and we have no standard for knowledge sharing and process.
Hello, gaffers. Hope you're enjoying the podcast. We love every one of the guests that we have, but in order to bring on more great guests, we'd love to build the channel with you. So hit the subscribe, hit the like button, and let's create a really great community where we bring in better and better guests for you to deliver great content and great pieces of information that you can take back into your business. Now, back to the podcast. Thank you.
I'm glad you said that, because the way I see it is if the problem is Mary or whoever's having the issue within the business, it's the leadership question rather than the individual question. Is who's leading this behavior and who is allowing this behavior to be implemented within the business, and how have you allowed this to happen? So, and I think that's probably where the easy thing is to just pull them out of the business and go, look, no, it's not working. Look, we just have to move on, rather than there could be something here that we just haven't worked on ourselves. We haven't identified ourselves. Maybe we need an internal training program that we can learn from this person's attitude and say, look, this person was allowed to succeed in that attitude, but that's not the attitude that's going to win us jobs or it's going to execute jobs in the future. So let's work with this person to see, can we change the person? And if we can, let's create a policy and a training program that facilitates that we don't, this doesn't happen again in the future, rather than just going, no, don't like the way you do business. You need to go.
When possible, if the organization is of sufficient size or is sort of agile enough, my recommendation would be like, is it possible to put people in a position that they are more like that their attitude or their way of working better suits the business, right? Because that's ultimately what it comes down to. We like
Brian,
everyone at this
the book here, pal.
Oh no, I'm coming back.
He's not my problem anymore.
I'm coming back. So, for example, let's say you do have a project manager and they do have a sort of behavioral problem that makes it difficult for other people who are working with them, right?
Yeah.
But what happens when that person actually is kind of a rock star at what they do, right?
Yeah.
They might be difficult to work with, but they're a high performer, right?
Yeah.
So you go to the leader and the leader's going to say, well, I don't want to get rid of them. They're the best. And so when I think about this, I think, okay, if they're the best, let's capture the best of how they work and let's make that a process.
Yeah.
And for the things that are not the best of how they work, let's talk about how we can all work together better as a team. Because if this guy or gal are delivering 80% of the results and say we've got 2 others that aren't doing so much, let's elevate those others, right? Let's elevate those others. But the other thing is, sometimes you can move people around to different departments or different things like that. But that I always try to leave things like termination and like disciplinary action to a last resort. Because I want everybody to win, and that's not some pie in the sky thing. It's just I've seen it work enough. I've seen it work often enough that is my go-to paradigm or my go-to mission is how do we make what we have work better?
Yeah.
I don't want to live in a world of fantasy. Sometimes you just got to make a hard decision.
So kind of answers my question as well in regards to your approach. It seems to be very much focused on structure and strategy and systems that, people will be people. And you obviously have to have a right environment in order for them to flourish, which is a fair point. But you're indicating to me that most of the issues are really probably, the execution rather than the people themselves.
There's a heavy people component to it, but I tend to see it and think of it more in the connections between people than the individual nodes, the individual people within the organization. There are people that I've worked with, and both within a company and as a client, that are just not very easy for me personally to work with, or not easy for people in their department to work with. But if we can structure things in a way that everybody's getting things done, and there's there's respect, there's an acceptable. That's my philosophy.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I'm going to throw some curveballs at you if you don't mind, because we're nearly the end of the show, Bryan.
Let's do it.
Knowing what you know now, what would you do different in life?
Oh, wow. That is a curveball.
Knowing
what I know now.
What would you do different in life?
Yeah. What would I do different in life?
Yeah.
I think I would have. So I'll do it like this. I'm a broadly interested person. I think what drew me to this kind of work is the fact that it touches on a lot of different industries and a lot of different functions within the industries. And that comes from me being a sort of longtime curious person. I had so many wild and crazy interests as a kid, and still to this day. I was like a musician for so many years. I was into archaeology and learning languages and all that stuff. And as I got older and older, I was sort of inculcated in this way of like, that's a little bit of a liability. Like pick a personality, pick a lane, and specialize really hard in that.
Yeah.
And I came to believe that over a while. And now I'm fully the opposite way. I don't think that's true at all. I think innovation comes from the intersection of different disciplines. And I think systems thinking works better when you've looked at different kinds of systems. And I think I would have doubled down on my sort of intellectual curiosities and embraced that more than trying to get really, really good at one thing for a long period of time. That was a personal. I don't know if that was the kind of answer you wanted. But
I'm trying to digest that. I'm like, I think we'll have to go away and take a cup of tea and come back.
Yeah. Hey, I'll be here.
So what did he say?
Yeah. So think about it like this. I'm a consultant, and a lot of consultants are really just, they call themselves consultants, but they're technical experts. They're subject matter experts. They're really executors of a very specific type of thing.
Yeah, no.
And they can command really great rates, and they can do that kind of thing, but it's a very limited thing. And I enjoy playing in the intersections, and I wish I had spent more time doing that.
Very interesting. That's actually very interesting. Favorite book? Anything? Business, fiction? You tell me.
There's so many books that I love, but if you wouldn't mind me saying two that have been particularly relevant in the past 6 or 7 years of my life.
No problem. As long as it's short form, not the long form version.
No. I'll just give you the titles and the quick answer. So one of them is a book called Essentialism by Greg McKeown.
Essentialism. Let me write that down.
Yeah. It is written like a book for business leaders and management thinkers, but it is a book about life. A lot of people confuse it with minimalism. It's not that. It's not about having the least amount of things. It's about focusing on what's really important now.
Very interesting.
And in a way, I don't know that I've verbalized this explicitly, but it's sort of the core ethos of what I'm doing right now is focusing on these things that actually matter beyond what's just bleeding and burning, right? The other thing is a little not well-known book that came out about a year ago by a guy named Derek Sivers. He writes these short little, almost like philosophical books, but they're practical and really digestible and not stuffy. And you can usually read them in a day because they're 80 pages or something like that, very small. And the one that he put out last year that I've since read 5 or 6 times is called Useful, Not True. And sorry, you probably thought these were going to be like construction and engineering books, maybe.
No. It's life books.
Useful, not true is basically the premise of it is if we say that by true, we mean something that is true for all people at all times, it's factual, it's not debatable. There's really not that many things that are like concrete true. And most of the things that are facts aren't really as exciting to talk about. What people want to talk about are their opinions, the way they relate to facts, the way they relate to people. And the gist of this book is how do you adopt a sort of point of view or thinking that is useful to you right now and being less concerned about whether it's objectively true. It's about how can you live your life from that point of view now and be willing to adjust and adopt different ways of thinking that benefit you at different times in your life.
Brilliant. I love it.
It's
Bryan Guess,
fantastic.
I've had a really, really enjoyable podcast with you today. The website that you have is www.bartizan.group. Bartizan.group. How do people contact you? How do you like them to contact you? And are you open to discovery calls and all that good stuff?
Of course, yeah. I live to help. So there's the 2 easiest ways to get in touch with me are to go to the website, bartizan.group. There's a button at the bottom that says like book a meeting or book a call. That comes straight to me or someone on the team. And then the other way is LinkedIn. Yeah. So I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. It's a way that I market to people that aren't directly in my network, and it's a way that I share ideas with people that I care what they think about. And it's a place that I learned. So you can go to my LinkedIn. It's going to be just my name with a hyphen in between it if you're typing the URL in. But if you search Bryan with a Y, Guess, you should find me.
Bryan, you're a bundle of energy, and I can see the reason why you went out on your own, because it would have been hard to sort of work with you.
Yeah.
I mean that in a good way. I mean that in a good way because you're just on it. You are just on it, as in, I'd say you're just like I get that sort of feeling from you that you have this just bundle of energy and excitement, and you're just a go-getter. I definitely got that from the podcast. You're just on it. I think it's probably the best way to frame it, and the best of luck with it as well. Best of luck with the business. And if there anybody is out there that is in serious need of help in your construction business, or you're just thinking to yourself, do you know what? It's Friday. I'm on the way home. I wonder, am I doing the right thing here with the business? Is there things I can do better with the business? This is why people like Bryan are an essential part of your toolkit in order to survive in construction. Bryan, we wish you all the best and every success, and thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Take care, pal.